Welcome back. It's been a while. Although it might not seem that way because you're probably like, hey, you just posted SDHO 8. What do you mean it's been a while? Well, it's been a while because I actually recorded SDHO 8 like 2 weeks ago, and I've sort of just needed a break. I do plan to make a lot of tutorials, Ableton tutorials, and Blender tutorials, which, by the way, they're going to be beginner Blender tutorials because I want people who have never used Blender before to like start using it and making stuff because it's free. And yeah, I think music makers ideally would love to be able to have their own art on their own music, or at least have the ability to do so. So a lot of new things will be coming, but I wanted to just hang out, sit down here for a little bit of a different SDHO, if you know what I mean. It's a water SDHO, which is good because then that means for the thumbnail I'll probably make some water bottles, which I haven't 3D modeled in a while. Always like to make things I haven't done in a while, just to, learn, excuse for a learning opportunity. Cheers. So what's been new with me in Ableton? Well, surprisingly, I finally just downloaded the new Ableton 11.1, which I'm recording this in like late May of 2022, and Ableton Live 11.1 came out, I think, like early March of this year, so it's been out for a while. And typically when there's like a 0.1 release, like Ableton Live 10.1, new features get added, some new audio effects, and I've really been in a mood where sometimes I used to not really update everything, like I didn't always update Blender or update Ableton, because a lot of times, depending on the build of your operating system, and I use a Mac, sometimes there could be a new update and maybe it doesn't work appropriately, so sometimes I hold off on doing that stuff. But I did download 11.1, which in truth I downloaded 11.1.5 which just means they obviously found and fixed some bugs. So I've been using Ableton 11.1 a bit, and I've been liking it. Mostly because I wanted to play around with this new device called a shifter, which basically does a few things, and we'll take a look at that a little bit later. And then I also want to play around with this other device, which many people might not really get too much out of. It's not like the sexiest device, but in my opinion, and that's the align delay, I think it does a thing that can help you a bit when you're doing drums, like slightly moving things behind the beat, which I guess you could have done with, not here, where is it? With these delay sliders, but maybe you don't want to use that. And I just think this align delay might give you more creative stuff. So this isn't like a going over 11.1. I'm going to get to those later, but I'm doing something different. As I'm sure you can tell on my screen up here, I've got these tracks open. And so what I want to do, and these are basically just like ambient tracks, like sound textures. Because what I do every so often is mostly when I work on Ableton, I'm pretty much farming ideas. So whether I'm like tweaking a synthesizer with my left or one of my hands and the other hand is like playing notes either on my laptop, or if I'm like going through synthesizers that I've designed and I'm playing them on like my MIDI keyboard, I'm normally farming ideas, and if I get a good idea, a good sound or like a melody or anything, I typically will save it either as like a clip or a loop or as its own project that I might open up in a week or in months or a year. And every so often, almost like once a year, maybe twice a year, I go through the bottom. I go from the bottom to the top of all of my projects, and I open these things that I might have maybe made last summer, and I'm like, oh my God, that's been just sitting at my computer, and I never know when I'm going to do this, but I've been going through old tracks, and so I opened this up. It sounded cool, and there's a couple of ideas and things I want to do. I also want to explore possibly some of these new devices in Ableton Live 11.1, and then also, boy, I feel like I'm getting choked up because I think this pop filter ball is like, I don't know, I think like my allergies are acting up. It's like the springtime and like everything's growing on the trees, and I had all the windows open in my house, and I used to have like bad allergies where I was allergic pretty much just to things that were outside. Drop a like if you've got seasonal allergies. I'm joking when I do those. Although likes would help, although I don't know if people are going to be drawn to these SDHO podcasts, but nevertheless, I do these for you guys, so I'll try to... Okay, so where the heck was I? So yeah, I want to just open up some things that I made, kind of explain what they are, what I want to do with them, and then like little creative things to sort of like turn them into stuff. So right here is something that I was doing, and it started with this. And I've got these other tracks up here, which I'm actually going to delete for the time being. Ultimately what it is this is a sound texture. This is something I just made. It's basically just this whole texture for this whole clip. And I've got these follow actions on. That's why these triangles look all choppy. That means they've got these follow actions. And you can find the follow actions here. Normally, it will look like this, which I don't know why this isn't looped. I'm going to make sure all these are looped. Are they all looped? They're all looped. So right now it's saying when this is done, it's going to go ahead and automatically play this one, which is up 2 semitones. So you can take a listen. So now we're up here. And again, we want to be over here in the Follow Actions tab. So right now we're playing this one, which is 2 semitones up from our original. So I just put it on warp mode on complex, and I pitched up the semitones up 2. And so when it hits the end of here, it's going to play any sound other than it. So it's either going to play 0 or -2. -2 is going to be down 2 semitones from this one. So now we're playing this, and now it's going to play other, and that's just because I chose it. So I like this because no matter what I'm doing in my ambient set, you know, with these other channels that I have here that we will get into, this is just always going to play because these are all looped. They're all looped, loop design, and they're going to sound good, and each time it plays, so right now it's coming to the end. So now it's playing this one. So this is the default one. And again, the one up here, I just shifted it up to, and the one down here, I shifted it down to. They all have follow actions, and each one of their follow actions, if you go to the follow action page, it's always other. So 100% of the time, once it plays this full bar loop, it's going to play a clip other than the one that was just playing. So now it's going to go to this 0 guy, our default. So a couple things I'm noticing. I don't know if you can hear that, but there's a little click at the end. So I'm actually just going to move this in a little bit because I don't like that click, which that must have been in the original. Must have been the original when I got to that stage. So right now we're playing this -2. That little click was over here. Let's see if it does it on this one just to make sure we know what we're doing. Okay, good, yeah. So we got rid of that click. So right now we're playing around with audio, okay? And whatever one is solid, that's the one it's playing. So I'm going to stop that temporarily. So, okay. This is just my recording clip. So these are just some audio samples, and these are in audio. Now, we have limitations when we use an audio clip. So this doesn't happen all the time, but because I mostly work with ambient music, I notice this is a problem that we get in audio clips when we have a big sound texture. So, for instance, I'm going to launch this up to clip. Now, because it's going to be starting on this audio texture, and because we're not starting at a zero crossing, I mean, we could move this in, but we're always going to get a click. It's just going to happen. When you go from like no sound to sound right away, like when this clip gets launched, there's going to be a little pop. Now, people will say, especially people like me who have been learning all this sound design, well, if you're at a zero crossing, you won't get it. You still will. Sometimes it'll sound like it is. Sometimes it'll sound like it's not. Sometimes it's more abrasive than others. But if I click play and take a listen, didn't sound like it, right? But sometimes it will do that. See, like right there was a click. So you really never know when it's going to do that or not, which is why it's better to take this into the sampling realm. And when this thing gets to the end over here, it's going to then play this clip down here, as we can see, and see if you can hear this little click when it starts. Even if we're on a zero crossing or not, like you still will like get it. Sometimes. See that? The click? Now, for those of you, you're like, oh, well, you can go into clip automation and you can, take this down and you can add a little crossfade. It's like you can, but you still get the click. So why do I say all of that? Not to bum you out. By the way, that's how you switch these panels over here. So if you were to put a bunch of reverb, you could kind of massage it away. And if I have other clips playing here, like let's launch this clip. And again, these are things that only if you're really listening, you'll pay attention to. Like if I relaunch this, you hear that like click over. Even when you stop it. It's like when volume goes from like playing to completely off, and then when it goes from that completely off to a new thing that's not playing, and then it goes on, it's like that spike creates that little pop. And even when you do little remedies, it doesn't always fix it perfectly. Sometimes it can seem like it can, sometimes it can seem like it can't. That was why I got the idea that I'm going to take these guys and I'm going to basically remedy that problem so I don't have to worry about it by basically taking these audio clips and putting them into a sampler, so then I can crossfade the loop over so we never run into that, which is just another way where you take audio, you bring it into MIDI, and then you're able to have more flexibility to MIDI and then more flexibility. Yeah, for someone I was like, ooh, that sounds good. So you don't have to do any of this. It's not so noticeable when you have things playing. So if I play this thing over here, which is like a sound texture, and I launch one of these clips, I heard the little click at the beginning. By the way, don't fix it if it ain't broke. That's what they always say. When I play around and I mess around with sound, a big part of what I do is I want to know every possibility that I have so I can make as many informed decisions and really learn my tools. So when you heard that click over right there, if we had this in a sampler, we could easily get rid of that. But again, it might not matter to you. And if I were to go into this clip, which just has an EQ, a compressor, I could kind of get rid of some of that by dropping a big reverb on there. A delay would make it worse because that little click would actually delay back and forth. So I'm going to just crank this up. See, you still hear it. See, where are we? We're on 0 right now. Yeah. So anyways, maybe that's just food for thought, but I'm going to go play around with that. I'm actually going to take this hybrid reverb, and I'm going to option click it over to this. So they're both in the same reverb. Unless I already have a reverb. Yeah, I already have a reverb. I don't know, which was the reverb I added? I'll delete this. Maybe it's better that it's its own reverb. This was a reverb that we did have, but I'm going to take it off Quartz, put it on Dark Hall. And let's see what's up here. This is kind of like its own thing. These are just all things that I was making one day. And if I like to then bring, and this is just a general ambiance. It's a little bit too fast for my likings. In fact, I don't think we're going to work with that one. I'm just going to close this down. And then let's see what we have over here. What is this? Just one big note. And it's a sampler. Looks like I just zoomed in on a very small part. And let's see what this sounds like. Oh, I've got some ambient stuff going on. Remember, I was doing a lot of this stuff a little while ago. So that's just me zooming in on a small little portion of this waveform. And then I'm using these MIDI effects, which are basically sorcery, especially when you chain them together. So it's like total alchemy. It's like you're taking all these like disparate parts and you're like morphing them into this whole. Yeah. So I don't know if that's going to really be a part of the thing we're going to do. We can go on to this later, but just to show you what I have here, and I'm going to move this over here. So what I did over here before we move back to our little guys over here, which they're still playing, I just unmuted this track. I'll just stop it for the time being. Come back into here just to show you what I was doing, and we can move forward after that back to the task at hand. And I promise we will get back into some of those other those brand new audio effects I was telling you about. So what I was doing over here in this track is if I turn these things off and I record enable this, this is just a note. If it sounded kind of chunky like that, it's because the delay is up too high. Wow, these are a lot of audio effects. Let's take this dry wet down. Because if it's up here, there's like a little delay when you hit the button. But I don't want that. See, I want to like hear when it rings. So what are we doing over here? Well, when we turn on chord and I click this button I'm about to click, so if I click one button, I hear one note. Okay? It's a long note because it plays it sustains when you hold it, and there's delay and there's reverb. One note, I'll play an octave up, then an octave down. Octave up, down. Now when I click this chord device, actually before I click the chord device, if I click on a Presiator and I click my note, it's going to play whatever division. So right now if I click that same note and I hold it down, it's going to play eighth notes. Doesn't sound so good, but, you know, whatever. That's just what the appreciator does. But when you put a chord down here, it's going to cycle through the chord depending on whatever the algorithm is, which right now it's up and down, which means it goes up and it goes down. It's a little bit more fun when you do con and diverge. So if I turn off appreciator, when I click that same note, it's not only going to play my note, but it's also going to play that 12 above, 19 above, 17 above, 11 above, 7 above, 14 above, and now we get this big thick chord. And so we're playing 7 notes at once now. So without the chord, 1 note. With the chord, now we have 7 notes. Which sounds crazy, but when we put the appreciator down, it's going to cycle through the notes. It's going to play them one by one, and we're going to get something like this. Again, I'm just holding 1 note down. And it's playing every 3. And I'm going to do a clip. I'm playing a C, and I'm going to push legato. I'm just going to call this C3 tree. I don't even know why. Okay. And we can come in here and we can change this stuff up. Maybe take the sustain out. See how the attack is moving slightly? I've got this LFO on the attack. So it never starts at the same place to give it more of like a human feel. That's like something I've been experimenting with. By the way, I'm using this LFO like crazy because it gives you this visual feedback, which I really like, and you can map multiple things. Look, I've got it mapped to the drive, the filtered. Wait, what drive are we mapping here? Oh, the drive on the saturator, and then the time length. I'm not sure where this time length is. But yeah, the LFO, I mean, why not? And anytime we can turn this rate up. And if we do note length, it'll make the notes extra long, which will make it more like ambient-y. So let's see how this changes now. Ah! Lower the volume. Just because we got a lot more notes, a lot longer notes. So I think you get the idea. This is pretty cool because it can just keep playing clips like this. You can even launch this other clip, which is an E3. It'll sound different. So ambient music, fun. And we can see what it sounds like with our nice little texture up here. I like to turn it down, turn the fader down, and slowly put it up till it sounds good, like it's till it like complements it without being overbearing. In fact, I don't really like this. Or actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this many times. Oh, never mind, we deleted it. I don't think we needed it anyway. I'm going to stop this other clip over here. We're going to move back to what we were going to be doing. I'm going to turn this off. And then before we move back to our little guys over here, to then put them in a sampler and see how we can make it better for ourselves and more convenient. Although it is helpful to like play around with audio effects because there's times when you may just want to work with audio and do certain things. But in any event, I feel like when I do work in Ableton, because there's so many options, I want to know how I can make things as efficient as possible for what I need. So like if some of these things that I'm doing, you're like, dude, I don't care, like move on to something else. I'm really trying to dive deep into certain areas because I guess the more you know, the more when you're in a certain... Because what happens is ultimately when you're finishing your own tracks, like when you're finishing your tracks and you're like fine tweaking things, you might be like, oh my God, this track is perfect, but like I don't like how I hear that little every so often. And the funny thing is that when it's combined with other tracks, you know, let's say there's other audio tracks, MIDI tracks in your project, the person who's listening is going to be listening to the composite. You know what I mean? Especially if they've only heard it a few times. So they're not like us, because like we'll go through every track and like, okay, I want this to be different on this one. So ultimately, it really doesn't matter that much. But I don't know. I love this. I want to know everything as much as I can. So I'm going to stop this little guy up here. And I'm going to insert a MIDI track. And on this MIDI track, I'm going to drop a, you guessed it, sampler. I'm going to record enable it, and I'm going to turn the record off of here. So we've got this 0 up here, +2, -2, which just means that I shifted the pitch. On the warp mode, I would say you either want to be on Complex or Complex Pro. This is a texture, so you could use texture. You may get better results, probably not. I get best using Complex and Complex Pro. I normally do Complex these days. Unless it doesn't do a good job, then I go to Complex Pro and then I turn the dials. But I find right out of the gate, Complex gives me a better result. So just be aware of that. So I'm going to take this 0 because this is our thing at at regular pitch. So here's what it sounds like. Remember that? And I'm going to go into sampler. And I'm going to drop this in here. And I'm going to turn this off. Now, if I play C3, it should do it. Yeah, of course. It's just, so it's the same thing. It's just the volume's a little low, which it just always does that. See how choppy it is? We got to give it, this is the volume envelope, so we want to give it release. So when we hit our note, it rings. Maybe not 60 seconds, but hear that click? You're like, oh no, but I thought you said we would get rid of the click. Well, of course, we'd use some attack. Not a lot. Without, just a little bit, 5 milliseconds. It's gone. But that doesn't save us necessarily. Because what we want to do is we want to click sustain mode because we want to loop it. And we want to go to loop start. We want to bring it in. So it's going to start here, but it's going to loop over here. And what I want to do is I want to give it some of this crossfade. So when it loops over, there's no click. If it were to loop over at the start here, there would be a click, and I'm going to bring the loop end in a little bit. So just listen. Now listen what happens when it clicks. Now this crossfade, it's going to blend between. Now watch what happens. Or watch and listen. Perfect. You couldn't hear anything. In fact, that's why I closed my eyes, because sometimes when you're having a problem, it's because it's almost like you're using double energy, and then I release it and it fades. Now you might say, well, so what about these +2 and -2s and that fun stuff you were doing with the audio, with the follow actions? Well, I'm going to close this just to get it out of the way. Not yet. So playing at the default pitch is C3. And I'm going to click legato, and I'm going to Control R and push 0. And then I'm going to move this up using Option and dragging it. And I'm going to do +2. And how do you do +2? Well, make sure you're selected, highlight it, 1, 2. And then we're going to take this guy, push Command D for duplicate, Command R for rename, -2. And we're going to go here, 2, 2, 1, 2. When you have a sound texture and it's playing, and again, over here, when we, just so you remember, by the way, Shift-Tab to go back to Instrument View, Shift-Tab takes us back to Clip View, Device View, that's Shift-Tab. When you drop, and I'm just going to rename this to Sampler, just to avoid any Sampler 1 in case we have like a million samplers. I don't think we'll go that long, but so anyways, no matter what you throw into a sampler, if you want to play it back where it originally is, the sampler device will play that at C3. That's why we went in here to C3, just so you know. So right now, if we play this clip, now right now we're just playing bars, okay? So I'm going to click this guy, and I'm going to push Shift and down arrow. Now we've highlighted these 3 clips, and we're going to come into here, and we're going to click follow action to activate it. And each time these guys play, in fact, I'm going to go to any. So I'm going to allow it to reselect itself. So every time we click on one of these, you're going to see each one's going to be a follow action of any. So if I click, what that means is right now I'm going to play the first one. After it plays a bar of itself, it's either going to play itself again, or it's going to play the +2 or the -2. So now we've got, and because these are all on loop, so if you go back over here, you'll see they're all on loop. They're going to just play. It's going to play any one. So now it's going to play -2. Now it's going to play +2. Cool, right? And there's no clicking when they start. Now here's something we're going to do, because I don't want it to just be bars. I want it to be really long. So I'm going to go into 0 over here, and I'm going to duplicate it, not that many times. I'm going to push Command Z to go back. Yeah, let's make it 8 bars. And I'm going to get rid of these. I'm going to select this, and I'm going to click legato. I want these all to be 8 bars. And just for vanity reasons, I'll just crop clip. So up here, I'm going to duplicate till we get 8 bars. I'm going to highlight this guy, legato. Then I'm going to come down to here, this last one, duplicate it, do the same thing, highlight this guy, legato. So now we've got 8, these are all 8 bars. Now you might say, okay, well, we're still on any. In fact, I'm going to just highlight these again, and I'm not going to do any, I'm going to do other, just because. You can do any one you want. If you want, you can make them play the previous every time, and you can also get crazy and then add a second one. So you can be like, 56% of the time play another one, 44% of the time play the next one. Yeah, because they were all selected, that's just a way to make the change to all of them. But I could go into this -2 and say after the -2, let's do like the previous and not again, previous. Doesn't matter. I'm just saying these are these are just extra things to do. So we'll play our 0. Now this guy's going to play for a full bar. The reason why it's going to play this full bar is because we're on linked, which means when it's linked, it says play the full bar. And this is a 1x. Play this full bar, or excuse me, play this full loop. And then 56% of the time, play another clip. 44% of the time, play next. So right now it's going to play this one up here. If it played next, it would play this -2. So now we go up to +2. It's going to play this full 8-bar clip, and then it's already selected that it's going to play this -2. So there's a 56% chance probability it's going to play one other than it, or a 44 it would play the next one 0. So now listen when this thing clicks over, okay? It's going to go right to -2 here. No click, no nothing. We weren't able to say that with our other guy here. That's why samplers do a lot more than just sample and beat flipping. So let's push stop. Actually, no. Let's go over here to this. I'll just rename this to Texture Good One. Press play. Bring up the fader till it sounds good. See what kind of, let's get a different reverb on here. Let's just get the regular reverb. I like the regular reverb when I know I just need a generic reverb. Like I just want a reverb with a long tail. That sounds interesting. What if we drop a chorus on here? I love chorus. It was really weird when I was learning about all the different audio effects, like many years ago. Whenever I learned about chorus, whoever was writing the article would always make fun of it. They're like, well, yeah, chorus is like if you want that like super old cheesy guitar tone. I was like, dude, if I throw out like a chunky chorus with a little bit of overdrive on my guitar and I start playing like arpeggiated, like interesting chords, it like has this like old-timey vibe that reminds me of like my childhood in like the early 90s. I'm like, I don't know what you guys are talking about, but that's why don't take sound design advice you hear from random people and take it as gospel. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to click stop. By the way, another thing I've been doing, see this, right now all we're hearing is texture. Let's click on the texture. Do we have an LFO? Oh, cool, we do. So let's turn the LFO on. The LFO is, I'm going to throw the LFO off just to bring it back and prove a point. So right now we've got this low-pass filter. Now, obviously you know what's going to happen if I move... Oh, excuse me, high-pass filter. It's gone. Normally we use this low-pass filter, which says bring all of these through. And right now we're cutting off all of the highs. But when I have certain sound textures, I know I don't really need these lows, so I actually put it on a high-pass filter, and I'm going to do this just to illustrate a point. And I'm going to bring it down slowly till when I'm not getting anything. Because I know I don't need all of the lowest lows. And those lowest lows are just going to eat into your headroom. So I know I don't need to go any lower, right? Like I don't really need that because it's going to conflict with what's going on in here. And this is, I don't need the lows in this sound. I just need like the character. So I'm trying to figure out where does it sound good when I massage this back and forth. Maybe right about there. So, and I'm going to just minimize that. So here's the thing. I want movement on this. Now you would say, oh dude, just come over here to the LFO panel. Give it a little bit of a movement. A slow rate. Okay, that's nice. Just to show it's working, I'm going to turn it up. You can hear it, right? But, you know, I don't like that because I can't see what's going on. So, like, right now, I'm turning it off. It's like moving it like that, but I can't see it. So this is doing it under the hood. But nowadays, like, Ableton has evolved. If you're following any of these tutorials, you pretty much have to have Ableton Live Suite, and you have all the devices. So we add this LFO, and we click Map, and we click Frequency. I'm actually going to turn off Reverb, so you can hear it better. Now, I'm going to turn this off, right? I'm going to have to delete it. So that's what it's doing. Now, I'm moving the frequency. Now, if I turn this all the way up, it's doing that same thing. In fact, yeah, at 1 hertz. So you'd say, well, just do that. No. You want to know why? Because I want that visual feedback. Because I know I don't want it to go up here. You know, I want there to always be a constant bass. The reason why I'm doing this with the auto filter right now, or I want like an LFO where I can really control what it's doing, is because when this thing plays over here, I want there to just be a moving, I want there to be like a bass level ambiance that moves. So it's more interesting than just if it's static. It's moving too quick. Let's take the rate down. But another reason why I want this is because, so right now I'm doing a sine wave, but it's predictable, right? We can hear it moving. The other thing that makes this LFO gold is jitter. So we get that same movement across the band that we want, but jitter is like making it move a little bit. So it's not predictable. It's not like, oh, it's a nice little sine wave. And you might think, well, hey, you know, you could still come into here and you could use one of the noise oscillators, but no, because first of all, if we use that noise oscillator, we don't really get to see, or actually here, how about this? Let's put the 0 back down, jitter to 0. Let's use a random. See, I just don't like that. I want it to be smoother, which I guess we can move up the smooth here. That's kind of interesting. But it's a little bit unpredictable. I mean, you can massage these parameters. But I find what I like is I'd rather just go on to sine, give it some jitter, because I can better choose where I want it to go. Take this depth down a little bit. That's way too fast rate. Normally, dude, I like rates down to like 0.1, because you want like subtle modulation. I'm telling you, you want subtle modulation. Shout out to subtle modulation. That's a friend I've made, sound design friends. I think we're all becoming friends here. Seems like a lot of the people that watch my stuff, they're just like me. Like, we love ambient music, taking ambient music to the next level. And what I heard back in the day is when you are using these modulations, you want to use them very subtly so you can like barely hear what's going on. Because if it's too obtuse, I don't know if that's the right word, it causes too much attention, but you want just a little bit. So I like this. So when we turn this back on, and I'm actually going to bring the fader down and bring it up, I want it to just be subtle enough. And then I'm going to bring this one down just to cut off some of the highs. Okay, right? Because sometimes the highs can be a little bit too much. Because I don't want this to stand out. I want it to be a background texture. And I'm going to put the filter drive on just to get it a little bit of oomph. Maybe boost. Maybe we don't need much boost. And I'm actually going to take this up because it's the focal point. Bring this down and then move it back up. Really bring it in because I want it to support it but not be overbearing. And do I have any spatial width on here? A little bit with the chorus, but let's go to delay and let's add a delay. Actually, screw it. Let's do echo. I'll be honest, guys. Echo is like a delay that's more sound design focused, but I just don't really get a whole lot of good sounds with echo. I like to have different times on the left and right. Actually, I'm going to go to triplet eighths. Bring the feedback up. This is a high-pass filter. I actually do kind of like that. When you go to the modulation tab, you can add a little bit of modulation to the delay, to the filter, at a very slow rate, I find is best. Ooh, that gave me an idea. I was like, oh, modulate the dry wet. Do we even have a LFO here? That's what's so cool with this LFO is because if you click this button and you click map, go over here, and let's do the dry wet. Do I like that? Do I not like that? Just a little bit. And that's why that jitter gives it that little back and forth. If I click back off here, I'm going to put that offset back on 0. So this sounds kind of nice, doesn't it? And at the same time, I can always, this sampler that's playing, which I can always just stop it. Gave me an idea. If I was recording this, I would let it fade out. And now, because it's record enabled, I can play it on my keyboard. I'm going to go 2 down. Back. Back down. And then I'll go down another 2 semitones. And then I'm going to go up 2 semitones. And then back down to that other down 2 semitones. And then we're going to restart it. And then back down 2. Up 2, down 2. I mean, you could go up 3, you could go up 4, you could go up 5. But typically when you have a sound texture, which may not always be super tonal, meaning like, oh, that's an A note. You know what I mean? It might be like kind of an A note, kind of not. Or it may be multiple resampled things. Typically when you have a sound and then you transpose that sound up 2 semitones, it always sounds good. And then when you go from that up 2 back down, always sounds good. Similarly, when you then go from that bass line and then go down 2, it darn well pretty much always sounds good. It can get a little dicier. By the way, when you go up 2 semitones, that's a major second interval. And when you play that thing and then you go down 2 semitones, you're going down a major second interval. Going up 7 is a perfect fifth. Going down 7 is a perfect fifth. So that's like the most harmonious harmonic interval besides like going up an octave or down an octave. Sometimes when it's a texture, it can sound a bit stretched and unlike the original when you go up 7 or go down 7 or go up 12, which is an octave, or go down 12, which is an octave. So I just wanted to go over some of that little stuff. Let's just stop this guy. Let's just go back into here, see if we get any ideas. These were just other little things I opened up. So like, let's push play on this guy. I got an idea. What if we go into MIDI effects, put a pitch back here, and just shift down, put it down an octave. I don't know why it stopped playing. It was like, yo, that was too complicated, man. Why would you do that to me? So that's fun. And then up here, I think this is just a random thing as well. Oh yeah, it's that. By the way, whenever you want to stop a clip, you just click any of these stop buttons. I guess we didn't get into any of the 11.1 features, but yeah, I didn't think we were going to go so long and go so hard. To be honest, if we play this thing over here, actually, let's play this thing. I'm going to lower this. This is way too loud. I don't want to leave you hanging here. So really the biggest thing is this shifter. They kind of updated the frequency shifter. Listen. It's a way to shift pitch. Just so you're aware, back in the day, frequency shifter, which now it's just called shifter, it wasn't actually shifting the pitch. It actually was just shifting the frequency. So it would be doing this sort of a thing. So that's not modulating the pitch. That's modulating the entire frequency of all the harmonics present. But when you go to pitch, now you're actually doing it. And you weren't able to do that before, especially to audio clips. So if you want, you could go to this LFO. I would put it on and see, you're modulating the pitch now. But remember when I said we don't like that because it's so much better to actually know what you're modulating. So again, modulators, LFO, map it to this. That's too strong, so we're just going to bring down the depth, of course. Like, I don't really want it to go that far, and I don't want it to be constant, because then someone's like, oh yeah, that's just a sine wave on the pitch. So we give it a little bit of jitter, something you can't really do down here, which is why this thing is just worth its weight in gold. That's too much again. I'm going to lower the depth, and it's going too fast. 1 hertz is way too fast, at least for me. So it's just giving it subtle pitch modulation, and subtle pitch modulation just gives it kind of like a warbly effect, which is just more interesting than if you just didn't do it. So that's that. I'm going to get into a line, which I think a line will be very beneficial to like slightly move things ahead or behind, which again, as I was mentioning, you could really just do with the delay channel. But if you have like a drum rack and you've got a bunch of things playing, you can either go in and slightly move the MIDI notes, or you can just drop the align delay on like the hi-hats or the snare and just slowly move it while everything plays till it sounds right. Maybe you feel like the drums should then change, and then you can the kick drum. So I feel like that would be a little off task if I started just playing around with drums. I've been recording for 50 minutes. I'm just happy that I felt like recording some stuff again. I figured I would sort of take a break because I wanted to get back to some other things and just sort of reevaluate and reassess. So I hope you like this. If you had fun playing around with this, hanging out, doing some ambient work, please drop a like so my channel just gets seen by more people. So what do we essentially do? We had this really nice sound texture, and I'm just going to lower that. We had that really nice sound texture, and we shifted it up 2 semitones up here. We shifted it down 2 semitones right here. We utilized follow actions to just morph through these, but whenever we started a clip, it would do a little click, and whenever it would flip over, it would do a click. When it would go to the next song, there would be a little click, and if you had delay, that little click would dong, dong, dong. So audio clips aren't the most effective for that technique when you want everything to be seamless. So we took that dude, we threw it into here, we gave it a nice little attack, so we got rid of that click. We gave it a nice little trail, something you also can't do, because when you've got that loop, it's not going to just trail on, you know what I mean, like you can do with this wonderful release down here. And then we inactivated the crossfade, so when it does loop, it's got a perfect seamless loop. Because I'm sure you guys might listen to ambient music, not just ambient music, like those long 10-hour ones on like YouTube, but like ones that are like atmospheres. Like it could be rain, and like after like 10 or 15 minutes, you hear that click over, or maybe you hear the loop go over, and then you hear the audio go up, and you're like, okay, that's the guy in his audio program not getting rid of that. Like I can hear your looping, and then every 10 or 12 minutes while you're working on your work, you're like, oh God, I'm going to hear the rain loop over because I know what it sounds like when it, you know what I mean? I'm sure you've been there. Drop a like if you've been there. Anyways, guys, I just wanted to go over that because I think that's a pretty important thing. I don't mean to suggest like, oh my God, only use your sound textures in samplers because you get so many more possibilities that you do get. I think it is pretty important to like play around with the audio clips. If you're having a problem getting into that, you pushed Shift Tab, because there's cool things you can do in the audio engine. You can mess around with the different warp modes. You can do my favorite thing, go to repitch, and then you can, see what it sounds like when you do that. Now you got that good sound. Now in theory, you could put it into sampler and you could play it many octaves down, but I really like this stretchy repitch mode for doing that. So my thoughts, and just the kind of person that I am, I like to know every nook and cranny. So when I make my stuff, if anything comes up and I'm like, why is it not doing this? I want it to do this. I'm like, oh, it's because it's not looping over seamlessly. So knowledge is power. Maybe if you're an ambient type producer like me, you want to know all of these nooks and crannies. But I think knowing this stuff as much as possible, it will just help you make better stuff, whatever you're making. So I will see you guys again. I don't know when these new tutorials are going to come out. I have to wait till the energy feels right. But I'm making a big list, not just of like Ableton tutorials, but also a big list of like the Blender tutorials as well. And they're going to be more beginner tutorials. Like Ice Cream Boy was not beginner, because I want to get a whole new area of people interested in computer graphics. It's basically just digital art to the next level. Yeah, you can be good with Photoshop and After Effects, but like in 3D, computer graphics art, digital art, like you're actually making the actual 3D objects. And you can still utilize various other digital art techniques to create worlds, but I don't know. I think people are going to want to learn some of that stuff. And then compositing in other softwares I can teach. Love you guys. Have a great day, and thank you. I've got a chunky dog staring at me right now, folks. Because he knows I should have fed him kibby 20 minutes ago. I don't know if you know this, but pugs, they get pretty damn hungry. Don't believe me? Well, I bet you I can make a pug dog spin around a whole bunch of times because he knows he wants the kibbies. Check it. Chonky wants kibby. Wow, 2 spins. Another 2 spins. Now we're gonna get a big yawn. You always do it, Chonky. And then a face lick, and then another partial yawn. Now we're gonna get another round of energy when I get the kibbies. Well, this is gonna be harder to film. Another big yawn. Anyways, guys, have a good day.